War. War never changes. But game developers? Oh, they do. Once upon a time, Bethesda Game Studios was the savior of Fallout. They rescued the series from the depths of isometric obscurity and gave it a new, immersive world to explore. Fallout 3, in some ways, was a masterpiece. Fallout 4 was pretty decent. And Fallout 76, well, it was like being promised to find whiskey, but getting a bottle of radioactive toilet water instead. And now, years later, the question lingers like a super mutant with poor hygiene. Does Bethesda still care about Fallout? Fallout. A world of nuclear annihilation, survival, and bizarrely intact bottles of Nuka-Cola. But before Bethesda took the reins, Fallout was a very different beast. A critically acclaimed yet commercially niche series of isometric RPGs where your biggest weapon was your speech skill and your greatest enemy was the game's own difficulty curve. Back in the late 90s, Fallout was a hardcore RPG fan's dream. Complex, morally gray, and full of choices that actually mattered. It was the kind of game where you could talk a final boss into quitting his job, or, if you weren't careful, get vaporized for asking too many questions in the wrong town. But then, interplay fell apart faster than a rad roach under a Fat Man nuke, and Fallout found itself abandoned in the wasteland. Until Bethesda Game Studios came along, kicking open the vault door like a super mutant behemoth. And so it was, in the year 2008, that Fallout returned. No longer a slow, text-heavy RPG, but an immersive 3D open-world epic where you could shoot, loot, and listen to 200-year-old swing music like it was completely normal. For many, this was their first experience in the Fallout universe. And Bethesda, they did many things right. The wasteland was beautiful in its bleakness. The world was massive, open, and full of stories. And most importantly, you could nuke an entire town just for fun. Because nothing says freedom of choice like deciding whether or not an entire town should continue existing. But while Fallout 3 was a critical and commercial success, something changed. This wasn't the same Fallout that old school Fallout fans had known. Dialogue trees were dumbed down, RPG mechanics were watered down, and suddenly, Fallout was less about player choice and more about how many bullets he had left in vats. And yet, Fallout 3 just worked. It wasn't perfect, but it was fresh, exciting, and full of life. Or at least, as full of life as a nuclear wasteland can be. Bethesda had saved Fallout. But what comes next would set the stage for a battle between two very different visions of what the franchise should be. Now let's take a brief detour to the Mojave Wasteland. Technically, Fallout New Vegas isn't a Bethesda game. It was made by Obsidian Entertainment, a studio consisting of former Fallout 1 and 2 developers. And these folks, they had a point to prove. New Vegas took everything Bethesda built and said, yeah, that's cool and all, but what if role-playing actually mattered? And just like that, Fallout 3's biggest flaws, oversimplified choices, weak dialogue, and shallow factions were fixed overnight. In this game, your decisions carried weight. You weren't just a good guy or an evil guy. You were whoever you wanted to be, in a world that actually reacted to your actions. New Vegas wasn't just a Fallout game. It was a Fallout experience. And yet, despite all of this, Bethesda barely acknowledged New Vegas' existence. Perhaps because it outclassed Fallout 3 in too many ways. Or perhaps because Bethesda saw it as a threat. By 2015, Bethesda was ready to take the reins once again. Fallout 4 was bigger, flashier, and had more crafting systems than a post-apocalyptic Home Depot. But something felt off. I found it. The dialogue system. Bethesda took one of Fallout's most defining features, complex, branching conversations, and replaced it with this.
What changed your mind?
Nothing.
Gone were the days of intelligent speech checks and moral dilemmas. Instead, we got voice protagonists and the illusion of choice. Bethesda had made Fallout more cinematic, but in doing so, they stripped away the very essence of what made Fallout Fallout. But don't worry, because if you ever got tired of the main story, there was always another settlement that needed your help. And so, as Fallout 4 reached its conclusion, the question remained, was Bethesda evolving the series, or were they just dumbing it down to reach a broader audience? Fallout was at a crossroads, and unfortunately, the road it took next would be full of potholes, server crashes, and nylon bags. Every great empire has a turning point. The moment where success starts to crack, where confidence turns into complacency, and where the people who once cheered in the streets begin to ask a dangerous question. What the hell happened? At E3 2018, Bethesda stood at the peak of its power. With Fallout 3, Skyrim, and Fallout 4, they had built a legacy of open-world adventures that players lost themselves in for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. And now, Todd Howard stood before the world, promising something revolutionary. Our most ambitious game yet. A world that is always online. A game with no NPCs, because the real story is you. Now, some of you may have heard the phrase, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Bethesda, however, had no intention of stopping at twice. No, they were about to take fooling people to nuclear levels. November 14th, 2018. Launch day. That magical moment when years of hard work finally come together, and a company proudly unveils its vision to the world. But Fallout 76, launch day, was not a celebration. It was a biblical disaster. Glitches, server crashes, unplayable frame rates, players phasing through the ground and falling into an infinite abyss. Fallout 76 launched not as an evolution of the franchise, but as a cautionary tale on how not to release a game. Then, there was the biggest problem of all, the lack of NPCs. Bethesda, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that human characters weren't necessary. Instead, players would rely on holotapes, terminals, and automated robots to tell a story. Unfortunately, this was about as engaging as reading a book with half of the pages missing. If Fallout 76 was the fire, then Bethesda's handling of its collector's edition was the gasoline that turned it into an inferno. You see, players who shelled out $200 for the Power Armor edition were promised a beautiful, high-quality canvas bag. Instead, well, they got something different. What arrived in the mail was not canvas. No, it was a thin, cheap nylon bag. The kind of thing you'd find at the clearance bin at a dollar store. When confronted, Bethesda's support responded with a simple message. We have no plans to fix this. But Bethesda wasn't finished. No, they had one more surprise up their sleeve. The introduction of Fallout First, a premium membership that cost a staggering $100 a year. What did you get? Private servers that barely worked, a scrap box that sometimes deleted your items, and an exclusive outfit that made you look like a member of a pre-war cult. Yes, Bethesda had not only launched a broken game, but they had also found a way to monetize its failures. And the players? They were not amused. Then 2 years later, Bethesda released the Wastelanders update, finally bringing human NPCs into the game for the first time. Suddenly, Fallout 76 had actual factions, choices, and dialogue. And, for the first time, it started to feel like Fallout again a little bit. I'll be honest, it was an improvement, no doubt. But the damage, it had already been done. Fallout 76 would always be remembered not as a bold new frontier for the franchise, but as one of the worst launches in game history. And Bethesda's response? Well, they learned one lesson. It just works. Doesn't work anymore. Every great franchise needs a vision, a roadmap, a guiding philosophy, a reason to exist beyond just making money. And yet, when it comes to Fallout, Bethesda seems to be wandering in the wasteland without a compass, hoping to stumble upon success rather than planning for it. You see, some companies carefully curate their franchises, ensuring each release builds upon the last in meaningful ways. Others act like a vault dweller with a head injury, making decisions that baffle even the most loyal fans. Once upon a time, Fallout was purely an RPG, a game about choices, consequences, and deep storytelling. Bethesda in its early days understood this. Fallout 3 took the old, isometric world and turned it into a living, breathing, first-person experience. It was not perfect, but it at least kind of felt like Fallout. But then something happened. Fallout 4 streamlined mechanics, gutted deep dialogue trees, and turned player agency into multiple-choice quiz with 4 barely different answers. The world was still fun to explore, but something was missing. The sense that you were truly crafting your own story. Then came Fallout 76, a game that asked, what if Fallout, but with no story? And just like that, Bethesda proved they not only misunderstood what made Fallout great, but also seemed to have no idea what to do with it moving forward. Now, we're going to shift gears, because this is kind of important. Let's take a look at Rockstar Games. When they realized that their old games in the Grand Theft Auto series no longer fit their new direction, they did something genius. They split the timeline. The 3D and the HD universes exist separately, allowing for creative freedom without contradictions. Bethesda, however, refuses to take a similar approach with Fallout, even as the franchise becomes more inconsistent than a Vault-Tec promise. If Bethesda embraced separate canons, they could have a Fallout that pleases literally everyone, a modern, an action-heavy take for casual players, and a deep lore-heavy RPG for the purists. Instead, they keep trying to merge it all into one increasingly nonsensical timeline, and the results are speaking for themselves. Now, let's talk about spin-offs. You see, the best thing Bethesda ever did for Fallout was letting someone else make a Fallout game. Fallout New Vegas remains one of the most beloved entries in the series, proving that another studio, one with actual RPG experience, could deliver an unforgettable Fallout experience. And yet, instead of learning from this, Bethesda chose to never let it happen ever again. Instead of commissioning spin-offs that explore new regions, new factions, or fresh perspectives, Bethesda keeps Fallout locked away, only allowing it when they're ready to fumble through another mainline entry. Imagine a Fallout game set in New Orleans, in the frozen tundra of Alaska, or deep within the heart of Texas. The possibilities are endless, but Bethesda seems content in doing the absolute bare minimum, leaving fan-made mods and ambitious community projects to do the work they won't. And then, like a Dexys Masha in a bad sci-fi novel, Microsoft swooped in and bought Bethesda for $7.5 billion. The question is, will it even matter? On one hand, Microsoft has the resources to push Bethesda in the right direction. They could demand a real roadmap for Fallout, bring in new developers, or even revive old studios to create fresh spin-offs. On the other hand, they could also just let Bethesda keep doing what they've been doing, re-releasing Skyrim and seeing what happens. The potential is there, but if Microsoft doesn't actively push for change, then Fallout's future will remain just as uncertain as its past. Because Fallout is a franchise right now in need of direction. It is not beyond saving, but it requires a leader, someone who truly understands what makes it special. Right now, Bethesda is not that leader. Maybe Microsoft can be. Or maybe, just maybe, it will be the fans. the passionate, relentless players who ultimately keep Fallout alive when its creators no longer care. Marketing a game is an art, a delicate balance between mystery and excitement, between giving players just enough information to keep them hooked, while leaving them desperate for more. Rockstar understands this. CD Projekt Red understands this. But Bethesda seems to believe that marketing is something that happens accidentally. One company orchestrates a global event, the other shrugs and says, "Oh yeah, we have a game coming out too." Let's take a journey through Bethesda's marketing strategy, or rather, the lack of one. For Fallout 4, Bethesda took a different approach. They announced the game just 5 months before release, catching players off guard in the best way possible. And it worked. Fallout 4 became a commercial success. But did they build on that success? No. No, they did not. Instead, they leaned into vague statements, unclear mechanics, and the now infamous promise that it just works. It did not just work. It barely functioned. And then, when Fallout 76 was already in crisis, they introduced Fallout First, a premium subscription for a game that was still broken. It was like offering someone a VIP ticket to board the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. Rockstar understands something Bethesda doesn't: the power of anticipation. A single GTA 6 trailer generates more excitement than Bethesda's last 5 years of Fallout combined. And why? Because they know how to tease, how to control the flow of information, and how to make every moment feel important. Hype is an art form. It's not about dumping all your information at once or being vague to the point of confusion. It's about curating an experience. And Bethesda doesn't curate. Bethesda dumps. Imagine if Bethesda took a different approach. Imagine a slow, methodical build-up to Fallout 5. Cryptic radio signals appearing in Fallout 76, teasing an upcoming event, hidden messages in previous games, a reason for players to feel like they're part of something bigger. Instead, we get abrupt announcements, disorganized messaging, and marketing campaigns that feel like they were designed on a napkin 5 minutes before a press conference. The good news? Bethesda can fix this. They have the franchise. They have the fan base. What they lack is the strategy. And if they don't change their approach soon, well, let's just say that in the Fallout universe, the past has a way of repeating itself. When Microsoft acquired Bethesda for a staggering $7.5 billion, fans of Fallout dared to hope. Was this the moment that would bring a new golden age to the wasteland? Or was it simply another shift in corporate ownership, promising much and delivering little? With great power comes great responsibility, or, in the case of Bethesda, great potential, and a tendency to release and re-release Skyrim. Microsoft has promised to give Bethesda the resources to create bigger, better games. But does that mean they will push for real change? Or simply bankroll another decade of it just works? One of the biggest questions looming over this acquisition is whether Microsoft will actively steer Bethesda towards making Fallout 5 sooner rather than later. Because let's face it, fans are starving for a new entry. But all they've been served is reheated content. If Microsoft truly wants to maximize Fallout's potential, the solution might not be in Bethesda's hands at all. It might be time to call in, don't make me say it, Obsidian. Obsidian Entertainment, the masterminds behind Fallout New Vegas, have repeatedly expressed interest in the past to return into the franchise. And yet, despite the overwhelming fan demand, Bethesda has remained hesitant. But now, Microsoft owns both companies. They have the power to make it happen. Imagine a world where Fallout returns to its RPG roots, where choices matter again, where the writing isn't afraid to be bold, deep, and darkly comedic. Microsoft holds the keys to that future. But will they turn it? And beyond just Fallout 5, Microsoft has an opportunity to expand the franchise in ways that Bethesda never dared to. Why limit Fallout to just the East and West Coasts? The Fallout universe is vast, full of untapped potential, and yet Bethesda has been content to tread the same ground over and over. What about a Fallout set in the flooded ruins of New Orleans? A brutal survival tale in the frozen remnants of Anchorage? Or even the Texas wasteland, where cowboy culture has survived and thrived in post-apocalyptic anarchy? The possibilities are endless, but Bethesda has shown no interest. Microsoft could change that. They could greenlight new spin-offs, entrust different studios to take creative risks, and make Fallout a franchise that evolves rather than stagnates. But will they? Of course, there is another possibility. One that should make Fallout fans nervous. What if Microsoft sees Fallout not as a world to build, but simply as a subscription service magnet? It's no secret that Microsoft is pushing Game Pass as the future of gaming. And while that's not inherently bad, it does raise the question, will Fallout's future be driven by creativity or corporate spreadsheets? If handled poorly, the future of Fallout could become one of microtransactions, half-baked online experience, and the continued refusal to take risks. The potential is limitless. Microsoft has the power to save Fallout, to give it the respect and resources it deserves. But power means nothing without action. Will they use it wisely? Will they push Bethesda to step up? Or will they bring in Obsidian? Will they expand the wasteland? Or will Fallout remain a franchise of squandered potential, lost opportunities, and broken promises? And so here we are. After decades of post-apocalyptic adventures, legendary storytelling, and well, questionable decision-making, we find ourselves asking the same question we started with. Does Bethesda still care about Fallout? There's no denying the impact Bethesda has had on Fallout. They took a forgotten relic of the late 90s and revived it in one of the biggest gaming franchises in history. But somewhere along the way, the priorities shifted. Was it corporate greed, a lack of vision, or just a severe case of Todd Howard syndrome? A condition where everything just works until it doesn't. Fallout has always been a series of contrasts. It is a world of deep storytelling, but also one where a rad roach can phase through walls and become an unkillable god. We've been told to trust the process, that Fallout 76 would evolve, that Fallout 5 would eventually arrive. But at what cost? At what point does nostalgia stop being enough to keep us hopeful? In the absence of direction, the fans took control. They became the true caretakers of Fallout. While Bethesda focused on monetization, the community focused on preservation, ensuring that the wasteland remained alive, even if the creators had all but abandoned it. There was a time when Fallout was about survival, choices, and consequences. But today it somewhat feels like a more expensive subscription service dressed up in a trench coat. So, does Bethesda still care? The truth is, maybe. Maybe they do in small ways. Maybe there are developers who genuinely love Fallout who wish they could give it the attention it deserves. But at the end of the day, Bethesda is not a person. It is a corporation. And corporations don't care about stories, or legacies, or the heart of a franchise. They care about profits. They care about the shareholders. They care about selling you a subscription to something you used to get for free. So, if you're looking for someone who truly cares about Fallout, you might not find them at Bethesda. You'll find them right here, in the players, the modders, and the diehard fans who refuse to let the wasteland die. And with that, our journey comes to an end. But don't wander off into the wasteland just yet. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the nuclear mess that is Bethesda's Fallout, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, or else Todd Howard might personally sell you another version of Skyrim. Stay safe out there, fellow Vault dwellers, and remember, war never changes, but corporate greed, Oh, that always finds a way.